Good afternoon, everyone. I am Maureen Neville, the Senior Director of Marketing Programs for the GBS-CIDP Foundation. I'm very excited that you are here today, and I'd like to welcome you to our very important topic today, driving adaptations and hand controls for the GBS-CIDP, MMN, and variant community. So before we get started, while everyone's kind of logging on, I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping notes. And one is, if you have questions during the presentation, please go down to the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen and put your questions there. And we'll make sure that we can get to as many questions as we can after the presentation. Also, I'd like to thank you to our sponsors for supporting us in this important program, and really for all the programs that they support. We're very much appreciate it. So joining us today is Dave Tuck. Dave is a volunteer for the foundation and a pharmacist. He is from California. Dave was diagnosed with CIDP in 2008, and his treatment with IVIG began in 2017. The following year, 2018, Dave had a couple of frightening experiences behind the wheel, which led him on a search for a better way to adapt his vehicle while kind of coping with CIDP. And the search led him to Gayle San Marco, who is also joining us today. Gayle is a certified driver rehabilitation specialist and an occupational therapist. And Dave and Gayle are going to share their experience and their expertise, and will be, as I said, answering questions at the end of their presentation today. So welcome, Dave and Gayle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think Maureen probably introduced more of what I was going to share right up front, but that's great. As she said, I was diagnosed with CIDP in 2008 and began IG in 17. But during the course of that, I found I needed to adjust, adapt, and stay independent. Gayle, what would you like to share?
And I think this is kind of a story of Dave's journey and how we were able to work together. So my name, as you have learned, is Gayle San Marco. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm also a certified driver rehabilitation specialist. And there really aren't very many people who understand what that means. But basically, we're a group of people internationally, mostly people who are in the healthcare or driver education communities, and we have learned to collaborate to try to help people to stay as independent as possible, as safely as possible, for as long as possible. So that's basically what we're about today. And I think I'm supposed to be figuring out how to get my PowerPoint up now, aren't I?
Yes.
All right, so let's get, all right. I think it's this one.
Perfect.
There we go.
Okay.
So welcome to our little talk today. And Dave and I are going to share a little bit about, I'll share a little bit about what I would do as an occupational therapist, driver rehab specialist. And Dave's going to share parts of his journey in getting as far as he has. There we go. So Dave just introduced himself. All righty. So this next slide, I really feel like I'm pretty much just preaching to the choir, but as a brief recap, peripheral neuropathies affect the myelin sheath that protects the peripheral nerves. It can cause the peripheral nerves to not function the way that they normally would. It could cause numbness and tingling. It can cause weakness. It can cause fatigue. It can cause a loss of deep tendon reflexes. And it can also cause abnormal muscle tones, things like weakness, spasm, rigidity, or it can cause unusual sensory. As an occupational therapist, my goal is to help my client, but the only way I know how to help them is to identify what are the problem areas. So there are skills that we all require in order to remain safely on the road. First of all, we all need good vision. Usually people in this particular community don't, the medical condition doesn't cause vision issues. We can have other issues like age-related vision issues, but usually CIDP, I always switch it around backwards. It's CIDP, right?
Correct. Yep. CIDP.
And Guillain-Barré, those kinds of conditions don't usually affect vision. We also need good cognitive skills. We need good thinking, ability to make decisions on the fly. Again, this group of medical conditions doesn't usually affect cognition. So when I work with somebody who's in this particular group, my focus is going to be on the sensory motor skills because that's what's being affected. So we're looking at things like muscle strength, coordination, ability to move quickly, accurate sensation. However, I learned a long time ago that I don't leave out assessment of the vision or cognition, because what if I'm working with somebody who had vision deficits and then also developed these other peripheral neuropathies? I need to make sure I don't miss important information.
Well, as Gayle and Maureen alluded to earlier, back towards the end of 2017 and 2018, I began having some near misses in my vehicle. Near misses in that I would come off freeway off ramps and go to hit my brake, and either my foot would barely touch the brake and fall off of it, or I'd hit the accelerator without realizing it and needing to come to a stop without going into an intersection coming off of a freeway became quite frightful. You can imagine the fight, flight, fright symptoms just kick in real quickly. Fortunately, I got stopped, but it became a very anxious setting, and a very frustrating setting would be the other piece to it. One is I didn't want to injure anybody, including myself or family members that were with me. Second, I was dealing with another function in life that I was losing. And I think all of us with any of these autoimmune diseases understand that piece. But I also knew that I needed to be proactive and I needed to do something to stay mobile and independent. So that was my initial experience. Gayle.
So Dave just described the scenario that made him think maybe we need to do something. Maybe I need to start thinking about making a change. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you just a few tips and cues, things to keep in mind to help you to start thinking through the process. And the more information you have, the better you're able to make an informed decision. So things that Dave described, I would have said he probably should have made his switch considerably earlier than he did. But everybody reaches their own point in their decision-making process in their own time. So things to think about: impaired sensation. Sometimes impaired sensation has a more profound effect on driving than even weakness does. So can you feel it if somebody lightly touches the bottom of your foot? That's light touch sensation. Deep pressure. Can you tell if you've got your foot pressing on the pedal? Can you tell how hard? Something that I didn't write down here is called proprioception. And that's, can you tell where your foot is when you're not looking at it? If you cannot tell where your foot is, then how do you know if it's actually getting over to the brake pedal when you need it to? Weakness is important. When you're assessing your movement abilities, can you do some of the following activities? Lift your knee up against gravity or flexing your hip. Can you extend your knee or make your legs straight when you're in the sitting position? Can you point your toes up towards the sky? And can you point your toes downwards like you're stepping on the pedals? If you have difficulty with any of those movements, it might be time to think about a change. Abnormal tone. If you have foot drop and you're trying to move between pedals, what if your toe snags on the pedal? If you have abnormal muscle tone or spasm that can also affect accuracy and speed.
Well, coming into that, trying to be proactive, I came across a documentary on, some of you know, a news pundit named Charles Krauthammer, who used to do things for Fox News. What you probably didn't know is that all we ever saw was from his waist up. Charles Krauthammer was in medical school at Harvard, and he suffered a C5 injury. So he didn't have use of his legs or feet. And what they showed in that documentary was this amazingly equipped out van that he drove around DC and New York in, even though he had this C5 injury, which led me to start looking at options for what can we do to adapt a vehicle for me. As I searched, I came across one site that was called the Association of Driver Rehab Specialists, ADED, and we have that link further down in the presentation, which gave me a list of occupational therapists for driving evaluations. And I looked for one that was close to me. And so I chose that and contacted Gayle. She emailed me an intake form, and also included in that intake form was a referral from either my physician, or in this case for me, it was my neurologist, to have an evaluation. Gayle.
Alrighty, so this slide shows some of those hyperlinks to help you find a driver rehab specialist. ADED is the Association of Driver Rehabilitation Specialists. It is an international organization. You can go to the website and locate the driver rehab specialist that's closest to you. The American Occupational Therapy Association is an American-based organization. They also have a listing of people who have certifications in driver rehabilitation. Then TREDS is more California, West Coast, and they also have a listing. So you can use any of those organizations. And sometimes you'll have people who are listed on one but not another. So often when I'm trying to help somebody find a professional close to them, I'll look on more than one of those websites. So now you've made the decision, you're going to go through and have an evaluation and just see what the options are that might be available to you. What can you expect? So what we do is called a comprehensive driving evaluation. A comprehensive evaluation includes both an in-office clinical assessment and an on-road assessment. For the clinical assessment, I'm looking at those three areas that we mentioned earlier: vision, cognition, and particularly sensory motor skills. I'll do assessment in each of those areas because I really want to know not just how the autoimmune disorders are affecting, but are there other things going on as well that I need to know about? Then during the on-road part of the assessment, we also spent some time talking about if you're a candidate for driving adaptations, I'll pull out my computer or my trusty little iPad, and I'll pull up websites and give you pictures and videos of your various options. What I like to do is help the client to select one or two options to try out on that first day, and then set up the vehicle. And after a little bit of a break, we head out to the car. So for the on-road part of the evaluation, if you're going to work with me, I have this little Jetta, which is a mid-sized sedan. I unfortunately don't have a van available. And I've got 8 different styles of hand controls. Back when Dave worked with us, we only had 3 or 4, I think. So we've got a lot more available now and some really kind of fun options. And I'll set up the first set of hand controls, give my client an opportunity to try it out. We might do it in a really quiet residential area, or we might go looking for a very large empty parking lot. Then after the client has tried out that first style, we'll give them a chance to try out a second style and see if there's a preference. By the end of the evaluation, the client usually knows, I like this or I don't, and do I want to try something else? There are several possible outcomes for a driving evaluation. A lot of people come in for an eval thinking they're going to see the OT, they're going to get the equipment prescription that day, we're going to write it up, and you're going to go home and get your vehicle installed. And it would be great if we could do that, but I'm not going to write up a prescription for somebody until they have demonstrated that they can use that equipment safely on city streets at least 35 miles an hour, making safe driving decisions. So if you were a person who you were recovering from a stroke, you had no physical impairments, and you had just really come back completely, you were just wanting to clarify, am I cleared to get back on the road? If you do, great. I'm going to tell you you're good to go. If I see issues that I think need a little training, we're going to talk about what do we need to do. Sometimes that training is just correcting old bad habits, which, by the way, we've all got, myself included. Or it might be training to compensate for some aspect of a disability. Most of the people in this group would be somebody who would need training with adaptations. So if you've selected a left foot accelerator or a spinner knob or hand controls, we're going to recommend that the next step is going to be training. So sometimes I get a client who comes in too early after a stroke and they're not recovered enough, they're not ready. That's the person that I'm going to say, let's put it on hold, continue working on those visual perception skills or the cognitive skills. Continue working on with your physical therapist to see if you get back this movement. And then later on, let's try this again when you have a better opportunity for success. Sometimes I have to make a recommendation for retirement from driving. That is a last resort, and only if somebody's got something going that I know isn't going to get better, and they're absolutely not safe to be on the road. Most of the clients, most of the people who are in this particular population are going to be looking at, let's get you some training with those adaptations.
Well, Gayle, before I move into this slide, you mentioned something in the previous discussion, and many people may not know what you were talking about. What is a spinner knob?
Good question.
Yes.
What is it?
The spinner knob?
Yes.
All right. So when Dave and I were going through our run through a couple nights ago, he mentioned that prior to his participating in the evaluation, I think I had mentioned a spinner knob and he had no clue what I was talking about. So I went through a little bit of it. He wanted me to describe what is a spinner knob. So spinner knobs have been around for decades, probably since at least the 40s. And they're frequently used by people who are in commercial industry, like forklift drivers use them a lot so they can quickly whip around that steering wheel and use their other hand for shifting the gears. But they're best known from the 50s, 60s, maybe even 70s, when the young driver would have one hand on the steering wheel with the spinner knob, and they'd be using that spinner knob to control the steering wheel. And the other hand would be draped around their best girl. That was called a necking knob. Also, at about that same time, that same spinner knob was often used by young people who were doing risky behaviors in their car and doing Brodies. And so it was called a Brody knob. What it does is it's a little knob on the steering wheel that allows you to make really quick, easy turns. And they come in very handy for people who drive with hand controls.
Thanks, Gayle. We'll show some pictures of a spinner knob in a few slides down. So I met with Gayle for the evaluation as she kind of went through before. We reviewed options. Then we did a hands-on trial, and she's right. At that point, I think we only had 3 options available, mechanical options, to try out. Finding a quiet place in the Reseda, Los Angeles area is probably a bigger challenge than trying to teach someone who's never used hand controls. But they had a few neighborhoods and school areas. So we did that. And then we came back and discussed her evaluation as well as my experience with that. And some of the things we kind of went over was a simple versus a complex type system, a lower cost versus a higher cost, mechanical versus an electronic type of option. How many people were going to be driving the vehicle that would have the adaptations? One person being me. Or in my case, my wife is like, for those of you who met her in Virginia, she's like 4'10.5", and I'm 6'2". We needed something that if she ever had to drive the vehicle or I needed her to, that she could drive it, and we needed to make sure the hand controls wouldn't be in the way or could be easily removed for her to drive. So that was a consideration. Other things had to do with the type of vehicle. I think hand controls adaptations can be done to any vehicle. Sometimes you may be recommended to get a whole different vehicle. And then the different vendors and products and the pros and cons associated with that. So those were the things that I continued from that evaluation to consider. Gayle. Oh, one more thing. At the end of that, I did have a big surprise, which the next slide gives away, but now versus later. And Gayle did mention that I probably should have been now even sooner than I was. But I'm just going to put out there, I didn't know that I was in need. I just knew I was having some panic situations and something needed to be addressed. And I think for a lot of us, we don't always know immediately if we have a problem that needs to be addressed. Sometimes it takes one of our loved ones or caregivers to say, you know, we may need to do something, but it may not just completely click in our brain. And then to think that I'm investigating it to find out I need to do it. Okay, Gayle.
And in relation to that topic in specific, I think the progression at times is so slow. You know, there are changes going on, but I'm still doing it. I'm still okay. And it keeps progressing, and you know, you think it over and I'm still okay. But then there comes that day when suddenly you realize it's not okay anymore. So I think that's one of the reasons why one of the reasons why a lot of people wait too long is because the progression's been pretty slow and they've been adapting. Sometimes I've talked with people who had to reach down and lift up their leg, using their hand to lift their leg in order to get their foot from one pedal to the next. Anytime you start having experiences where you're having trouble lifting your leg in time, or if the foot's starting to slip a little bit, it's time. And it's actually, you probably should have done it a little bit sooner. I think from the perspective of, I want my people safe. I really want my people to be safe. And so being proactive and going in a little earlier than you think might be the best plan. All right, so for this section, we're going to go through some of the driving adaptations that are available. Everybody's different. Everybody's going to use things that appeal to them or that are more comfortable for them, or that physically you might be able to operate one thing and another one maybe not so much. So the process of an evaluation is to help you find, first of all, what do you need? And then second of all, if there are choices available, I love giving my people choices. So some of these adaptations might not be specific to autoimmune disorders, but there are things that are out there. Panoramic mirror is something that can be used to broaden your view so you can see what's behind you even more clearly. Now, in the picture that you see at the top right of your screen, the I'm having to move my little photos over here so I can make sure I'm telling you the right thing. So in the peach area, that's what you see when you're looking in your standard rear view mirror. You only see what's out the back window. The pink area is what you can see if you include a panoramic rear view mirror. So clearly you can see a wider view. These are two more adaptive mirrors. Both of them, you look at the standard mirror that's on the bottom, and that's what you would see in that particular car or vehicle's mirror. Up in the top mirror, you compare the top and the bottom pictures, and you can see a much broader view. If you position those mirrors, you can get almost 180 degrees of what's behind you. And backup cameras, which I consider to be a gift from God. When you look out the rear, the picture on the left side of your screen, you look in your rear view mirror, and that's what you see. So one day I was renting a car in Connecticut. My daughter was in college. It was an SUV. And I swear I looked out the back window and I started backing up, and I ran into the post that I couldn't see. If there had been a backup camera in that car, I hopefully would have looked in the backup camera and not seen it. So as you can see, backup cameras show you a whole lot more information, and I recommend them to everyone. Here are some of the adaptations. Now in the left picture, down at the bottom left, there's that spinner knob that we were talking about. Up here, this lever that's across the top of the steering wheel, that's a turn signal crossover lever. And that can help you to operate the turn signal if you don't have enough strength on the left side to access your standard turn signal. This little device over here, right-hand picture, it's a spinner knob, but it's got all these buttons on there. The button up at the top, that's your bright lights. Right here, that's your horn. This is your right turn signal, your left turn signal, windshield wipers. You can add all of these wonderful devices to help you out if you're only steering and accessing other cars' controls using one hand. It is pricey, but for some people, it's a game changer. This is a mechanical left foot accelerator. You can see there's something attached to the floor of your car. There's a pedal, and this is called a pedal block. The pedal on the right is a pedal block. So this is for the person whose right foot might not be strong enough to get reliably back and forth from gas to brake pedal. So you would learn how to use a left foot accelerator. Pressing down with the left foot applies the gas, and you would move back and forth from gas to brake this way instead of going back and forth this way. These are two different styles of mechanical hand controls. Oh, by the way, there is an electronic left foot accelerator, which I love. And I don't remember if I have a picture of that. I don't think so, but the electronic left foot accelerators are good for vehicles 2010 and newer. This is a mechanical hand control. This one's imported from Finland, and it's called the Minox. It's a floor-mounted push-pull. So all of the mechanical hand controls, you're going to do a push towards the dashboard to apply the brake, and then a different movement to apply the gas. For this one, you're going to bring the hand control back towards you. So it's a pulling towards you to apply the gas. Now I did it with a big movement, but the truth is it just takes fingertips to get that acceleration to go. This is one of the old school hand controls. It doesn't look quite as cool, but it's absolutely reliable and a little less expensive. This one, you push it towards the dashboard for brake, and then down towards your hips or down towards your lap for gas. So it's this kind of a movement. This is this is called a push rock. The company is Sure Grip, and I think they were the first ones to introduce this style of hand control. Everybody's copying it now. So you've got this handle that you rocket towards you for gas and push it away from you for stop. Electronic hand controls. Now, on this screen, there's a hyperlink. The hyperlink, if you choose to go back and look at this one, it'll take you to a video. So you have a chance to see how this actually works. When I started playing around with the Zoom, I couldn't get the video to work. So later on, they're going to upload the slides to the website and you'll be able to check this out yourselves. But in order to stop, you push towards the dashboard and you can see there's a handle. All you do is you give it a little bit of twist like that and it's gas. It's very simple. And most of the people that I have now who have tried this one out, they absolutely love it. This is what Dave picked out. And Dave, you want to talk a little bit about the accelerator ring?
The accelerator ring came down within the choices that I had back in 2018-19 when we were reviewing this, is that, again, as we stated, I'm really tall and I'm tall from my waist down in my legs. So a lot of your mechanical controls, they have equipment they put underneath your dash column. And so I kept hitting my knees on them, either getting in and out or when I was driving. That was kind of aggravating. This gave me the ability to not only turn the hand controls off and on, so if my wife needed to drive the car, I could just turn it off. And it also gave me the ability not to be restricted underneath the steering column, so I had leg room. So basically the ring here, this one isn't completely around, but mine is. It goes inside your regular ring. It floats in a sense, so when you turn the car, it just floats with you. You can touch that ring anywhere with the palms of your hands, your fingers, and it accelerates. And you have 2 speed controls on there. So you can either have a slower responsive system, or you can have what they call a sport mode, which I think is not the right term for it. It just makes it more responsive. And then on the right, you see a knob, and that's your hand brake. And to brake, you just push it down. And you can have that installed on the left or the right side of your vehicle, whichever is recommended by your OTR or by your comfort. So I had mine installed on the right-hand side. It's been really a good system. It's very reliable. And like I said, if my wife needs to drive it, I just push a little button on the dash that's been installed, and it disconnects the whole thing. Now the brake is still mechanical, and I don't think anybody has an electronic brake system. I think all of them are somehow mechanically operated. So yeah, that's the system that I went to.
So all of the equipment that we're talking about today would be in the lower tech realm. And Dave's right. Pretty much everything that we're talking about today, the braking is mechanical. The one device that I showed you with the push twist, that one has a mechanical brake, but it's actually plugged into your car's electronic acceleration system. And so when you apply the gas, it feels much more responsive, and it feels like your car, not like a mechanical device that you're operating. So this particular, go ahead.
Something I didn't know when we did this is that, I don't know what year it changed, but your accelerator pedal is not mechanical anymore. Even the normal one, it's all digital. So even though you're pushing against it and think you're putting resistance on that and pushing, it's a digital feed that goes in there. So when they put an electronic control on it, it's just tying into your digital feed to do that. So that was that it wasn't an actual mechanical function anymore.
Right. And I think it's most of the electronic hand controls only are suited for cars that are 2010 and newer. So I think that's pretty much when the hard transition happened. All right. So something else that might be interesting is the fact that there are different kinds of lifting seats and lifting devices that are available for getting your wheelchair in and out of a car if you need to use one. And we're just going to show some of them. This one is the Turney Evo seat. It's by Braun Ability. And you can see, you've probably seen it. It's a regular driver's seat that it turns, exits the vehicle, and lowers so that somebody who's seated in a wheelchair can do a pretty easy hop across transfer and then use a pendant switch to raise the seat height up, bring them back in, and pivot into this driver's position. Again, the hyperlink will take you to the website that does have some video. This is, when I made this slide, I thought I was going to be able to play videos. This one, if you click on the link, it's going to show you two things. It's going to show you, it's basically an electric slide board lifting seat and an electric wheelchair lifting device. So the lifting seat, when you open your door, you're going to see a platform inside the door between the door and your seat. You lower it, and then you'll use the pendant switch to power it down. You slide onto it, it'll lift you back up, and then you can slide across into your driver's seat and then lift it back up to close your door. It's also going to show a video of a wheelchair lifting device that's suitable for some, not all, manual wheelchairs that can lift your wheelchair into your vehicle. This is for the person who wants to be able to bring their wheelchair in and out of their vehicle, doesn't want to have to lift it because it does long-term wear and tear on your shoulders, but doesn't want to pay the big bucks for the lowered floor minivans. And it's really a wonderful option. I've got several clients who are using this and love it. This is another wheelchair lifting device. This is for the people who prefer trucks. It's called the Bruno Outrider. Once you've gotten into your driver's seat, it has this little crane that swings around from the bed of the truck. It lowers a strap. You fasten this large carbiner hook, and then it'll lift your wheelchair in, swing it over the side of your truck, and seat it into the bed of your truck. And the boom lowers on the wheelchair seat, so it won't go bouncing around and fall out of your truck if you do risky maneuvers while you're driving. This video shows you the process that they go through to modify your wheelchair accessible minivan so that you can push up a ramp, get into the van while you're seated in your wheelchair, and get into a transfer seat. It's really pretty interesting, so I would recommend that you go ahead and check it out. It's an extensive process. They literally cut the entire floor off the minivan, from the back axle to the front firewall, and then they lower the floor because otherwise you wouldn't be able to stay seated in your wheelchair and push up the ramp into the van. There wouldn't be enough head height. And then they have to reposition all of those things like the exhaust system that normally they go underneath the floor. So it's a really interesting process. And for those people who are wondering, why are those vans so expensive? This is why. All right, people want to know about financing. In terms of medical insurance, Medicare made a decision probably 10, 15 years ago that they do not pay for driving evaluations. However, Medicare does pay for clinical assessment of driving related skills. How can you get that covered? The only way that you can get access to that is if you are involved in an occupational therapy program. And The OT can do assessments of specific driving related skills and can provide that information either to the therapist who's doing the on-road eval, or so for instance, I work privately. I also work at Northridge Hospital. At Northridge Hospital, if they've got an outpatient who wants to do the driving program, I can see them for a couple of their regular therapy sessions. I can do the same assessments that I would do if I did the full eval by myself. And then they can come back later as a cash pay client to pay for the on-road eval, because Medicare will not pay for the on-road. And something I didn't mention is that once Medicare made that decision, pretty much all of the other insurance companies followed suit. So it's going to be extremely, extremely rare that you're going to find any medical insurance that will pay for that. However, sometimes determinations are regional. So it's always good when you get connected with a driver rehab specialist, ask them, is there a way that I can get at least part of this evaluation covered? And they might be able to give you advice on how to do that. Also, there are some financing options available. The Adaptive Driving Alliance has something called a ZIP loan. It is available specifically for driving evaluations, driver training, and driving adaptations. The loan can be for as little as $1,000 and for up to $35,000. If you pay it off in 6 months, there's zero interest, but you can select a longer term to finance. Back to Dave.
Oh, thanks, Gayle. Well, after all that information, I took the pieces that I was interested in, or the equipment, and started digging deeper on those companies' websites and products. And the one that I went with, the Kempf Dario system, Gayle didn't have anything as an option or anybody I could see down there. So I contacted Kempf, and Martine Kempf, who is the daughter of the man who created that system, got back immediately with me saying that there was someone in our area that actually has their system, and she contacted him and said I could reach out and he would be more than willing to show me and actually let me drive it. So I followed up with that. So I think the importance of this is, if you find a system that your therapist kind of suggests or that you're really interested in, don't give up if they don't have that. Try to find someone within some near area. It might be a couple-hour drive, but at least it's better than not being able to see it, because I would not buy anything sight unseen or having a chance to have some hands-on experience with it. I think the other piece to it is looking for businesses that are licensed to make adaptations. When your equipment's ordered, in fact, that ADED site also has those that are licensed, because you can't just have anybody place this equipment in your vehicle. I think Gayle has more to say about that. But that was my research. And then I came back down and said, this is what I think I want to do. Let's pursue it. And Gayle wrote up a whole recommendation for my physician to see and sign off. And then we started that process.
And one of the things that Dave brought up about, not every program is going to have every piece of equipment out there. And Dave had some pretty specific requirements. We gave him a chance to try a couple things out, and he decided he really wanted to try out that accelerator ring. I didn't have one. So, I helped him identify potential options, and he was able to reach out to Martine directly at Kempf. She reached out to somebody who allowed Dave to try his vehicle, which is amazing. And since that time, Dave's paid it forward. I have had other clients who needed to see that accelerator ring, and Dave has traveled to be able to show that. And I'm so appreciative that he's been able to do that. On the topic of making sure that you get something installed by somebody who's qualified, please do not order stuff on Amazon. I've heard the worst horror stories. You want somebody to install the equipment who's certified, and you want to make sure that your equipment and the installation of the equipment hold up to the same crash testing standards that your vehicle is held to. So the QAP program is available through NMEDA. That's the National Mobility Equipment Dealers Association. They certify vehicles nationally, and they're held to very high standards. And Dave, these are your websites.
Thanks a lot. I think Gayle can make some comments on the ones she wants to overview, but we put these on here so you'd have some links to look at. The first one is NHTSA, has great overview of adaptive equipment for vehicles and things to consider. So it's definitely worth a look there. It'll check off some things on your list. The ADD site is right there. And again, it has various sections, including occupational therapists, places that do adaptive equipment supplies. That I think the rest of them, as you go through, are different companies. It may not be everything that Gayle mentioned. I think there was a newer company she had that I didn't, but these were the ones that when I went down there that we looked at.
I think you've got most of them there. These are the major manufacturers in North America. So yeah, I think you've got everything. Where we might not have showed you every style of hand control out there, if you click on these websites, you're going to find pretty much everything.
I think the one that you showed earlier, the one that was the electronic control that you said a lot of your clients are liking, that wasn't available when I was down there, that link is on here.
Yes, it is. That one is available on Mobility, Vigal Products, Mobility Innovation. So you
it is
have it. Okay. Yep, it's in there.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, so.
Well, this is probably my last piece to it. I think my recommendation is, as a patient, is be patient in the process. Ask questions, lots of questions. You know, make sure you're satisfied with the answers you're getting, and if you don't get the answers you want, keep asking. Do your research, think through everything, and just so you know, from start to finish, from the time that I met with Gayle to the point that we had the hand controls installed was 11 to 12 months from start to finish. And that did not include driver instruction. So then you have driver instruction so that you learn how to use the equipment safely. And Gayle at that point had kind of I call him a, it's not the right word, a demon instructor. And so he chose, after we had 1 day of instruction, to take me up into UCLA Medical Center at lunchtime, going through campus at one of the busiest times. And I said, "What are you doing to me?" Well, he says, "You got to learn how to drive this in all situations." And then he took me on the Hollywood freeway, and it was busier than anything. I'm going, wow. So, yeah. Anyways, just take your time. You know, you may need it. You may be told you need it, but make sure you get the right choice, because it's an investment, but it's well worth it to stay mobile and to stay able to get around.
Thank you.
Thank you from both of us.
Yeah. So it's a pleasure presenting today.
That was excellent. Excellent to both of you. Great job. We have 1 or 2 questions, and we've got about 5 or 6 minutes for that. So let me get to that for you. So do most rehabilitation facilities have a certified driver rehabilitation specialist on staff?
No.
Okay.
No, unfortunately, I've been called a unicorn. There aren't very many of us around, which is why we made sure that we presented you with websites. There might be some states where there's only one CDRS available in the entire state. In California, I think there's 20 or 25 of us. There's about 5 of us in Los Angeles County. And up where Dave lives, I don't know if there's anybody working up there now, which is why he came all the way down to me, which is about a 3-hour drive. So we've given you tools to do research.
Fantastic. And you had mentioned, Gayle, so Medicare and most insurance companies will not pay for the evaluation. Will they pay for the equipment? I'm not sure if I saw that. Will they pay for any of the devices or partially?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
So to date, I have not been informed that anybody has had their equipment paid for by their medical insurance. I did have 2 clients a couple summers ago tell me that their medical insurance actually offered to do the installation and the purchase of the equipment, but it had to be through an approved DME provider.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, most of the DME providers are not certified to train to install the equipment. So that's my concern. I want, if you select somebody, make sure that they have been certified to install that equipment. I was just informed that there is an OT, I think it's in Virginia, where she made sure the whole process was seamless. She owns the place where they do the installations as well.
Gotcha. So connect with your OT. It sounds like you start this whole journey with your OT. To just ask questions of your OT. Would your neurologist know about this? Anybody else in your circle of care that would actually have not expertise, but at least know to refer you to somebody like yourself?
So some of the neurologists are aware that we exist, but not everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not unless a client or a patient starts asking questions that neurologist might start asking their other neurologist friends, what do you do? Yeah. And so sometimes the word starts getting around. Yeah. I mentioned I do this privately as well as through the hospital. And the doctors came looking for me during COVID. The hospital program was shut down. But the federal government allowed me to continue working. So the doctors started looking for me and found me.
Word got out about you.
Yeah.
So a few more questions here we can take. Do you have any experience with the joystick type of hand control?
Yep. They're amazing. They're incredibly expensive. I for 10 years had a high-tech band through the hospital program. I didn't get that many referrals, so not that many people need them, but for those who do need them, they're wonderful. Yeah. And the difficulty is they are high-tech, and anything high-tech, you don't want it to go past its expiration date. If you think about a computer that's gone past its expiration date, it starts to slow down. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to anymore. You don't want that to happen in a vehicle. Right. So our van through the hospital went past its expiration date and we had to retire it. So it's difficult to get a program with a joystick. And if you're on the West Coast and you need help to locate somebody, feel free to reach out. I'll help you to find somebody.
Great. Appreciate that, Gayle.
One point on the previous question. You should check if you're thinking of getting a new vehicle and hand controls, check with that manufacturer, because a lot of manufacturers offer a rebate if you're going to put hand controls on that vehicle brand new.
Really good information. Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
One more question we will go to here. Do you need any kind of, I think you might have answered this, but for this attendee, if you could answer it again, do you need any kind of certification from the DMV to use adaptive driving devices?
Every state has their own requirements. And in California, if you have a medical condition that affects your level of alertness, awareness, or consciousness, the ability to perform any activity of daily living, or the sensory motor skills that are required to operate a motor vehicle. Those medical conditions are all considered to be reportable by law to the DMV. So by definition, anybody who needs hand controls is reportable. My goal is to give you the knowledge that you need and the training that you need to be able to go through that process and be successful at it. However, I do not report people to the DMV because I'm not a mandated reporter. So that topic is left between my client and their physician.
Great. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have coming in. You guys were so thorough, so I think you answered everyone's questions during your presentation. But any last word from the two of you before we close out this amazing topic?
I thank the foundation for letting us present this. And
Thank you.
for those that signed up to listen and those in the future that go in to look, I hope it's helpful. It's been very helpful to me.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and I'm really honored to be, part of the presentation. And I think Dave's story is a really good story to help people to see the transition. Where did Dave start? Where did Dave start off? What process he went through, and what things brought him to make a decision to move forward. I think that's really important to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you both so much. You're offering so much hope for our community to maintain their independence. Amazing resources. I can't imagine that if you wanted to get adapted driving devices at this point, that you would not be able to find a path with all the resources that are here in this presentation. And as Gayle said, it will be available on our website. We'll follow up with an email as well with those resources also in the email to anyone who has registered for the session today. And we thank you all for attending. We thank you, our special guests, Dave and Gayle, and hope to see you at our Ask the Experts next month. So take care and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.